We're going to kick things off with NASCAR on Fox face and voice, Mike Joy. Following that up, we will speak with MRN's Turn 1 and 2 announcer, Dave Moody, and we'll finish the interview with the legendary Jack Arute. So tune in and enjoy this great conversation from the New England Racing Museum and Legends Day at Loudon, New Hampshire. Mike, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have you here.
Thanks. You could have turned the heat up just a little. I mean outside, not inside. It's fine in here, but wow, winter's come, hasn't it?
Absolutely it has. So the first question I always like to ask, and we're here for a great event today, but how'd you catch the racing bug?
When I was 11, my dad brought home a sports car that he had purchased from the estate of the former president of the company that he worked for. It was a two-seater, top down, loved it. Started reading car magazines, particularly Car and Driver, Road and Track, Sports Car Graphic, and Road Racing. Man, that was great. So I would be on the hillsides at Lime Rock or, up here in the bleachers and the gravel at Briar and watching sports car races, especially the Trans Am. I was asked to sit in at Riverside Park Speedway in Agawam, Mass. for a modified race in the announce booth and just fell in love with it right away. And that's really where it started.
An excellent event here today, honoring not only yourself, but also Jack Arute, Dick Berggren, and Ken Squire. What do those names mean to you as somebody who's been involved in the sport for as long as you have?
Well, they're all close friends. And it's fair to say that without Ken Squire, the three of us would all be announcing local stock car races. We'd be frustrated racers of mediocre talent and penniless. But Ken launched the careers of all of us in broadcasting. Although Dick already had a great magazine career and was a college professor, Jack and I, and just thank goodness for Ken Squire. That's probably the biggest thing to come out of today.
Do you think the history of New England motorsports is overlooked compared to the rest of the country in the grand scheme of it?
No, not at all. Every part of the country I go to has a vibrant short track and maybe a drag racing and a road racing community. They're not all celebrated in such a grand museum as you have at New Hampshire Motor Speedway here, but people are very passionate about their tracks and their racers everywhere we go. And without those passionate fans, none of these big speedways that dot the country now could ever have been built or ever have survived. So I would tell people, hey, they're building a track in New Hampshire, we're going to bring the Cup cars there. They'd go, why? I'd go, because racing is just as big there as it is anywhere. When I was at Stafford with Jack in the late 70s, we would go to the area newspapers and talk to the sports editors. Why don't you cover racing? Nobody cares about that. Baloney. I'd say, do you know that just in southern New England, Connecticut and Massachusetts, on any given Saturday night, there are more people at short tracks than there are at Fenway Park for the Red Sox, or for the Patriots, or for the Bruins, or for the Celtics? Really? Absolutely. Here are the attendance numbers. And some papers, like the Hartford Times with Pete Zanardi, the Journal-Inquirer in Vernon, Connecticut with Matt Buckler, and later the Hartford Courant caught on, the New Haven paper, the Norwalk paper, Charlie Mitchell. If they would have stories on racing, they would see a bump in the circulation. And so eventually they had beat writers devoted to racing. So it's as big as anywhere. However, the cities here are big. Media to buy is expensive. So it was always more difficult to gain a share of voice in the sports world in New England than it was anywhere else.
Let's jump to your broadcasting career, 22 plus years now at NASCAR on Fox. A couple of different names you've worked with over the years, of course, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip. Next year, you're going to have a new face in the booth. What's it going to be like to wrangle in Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick working with you next year?
Can't wait. No, it's going to be great. I think Kevin, in his speaking, is much more matter of fact than Darrell or Larry or Clint or any number of people. I would say he's going to be most like Jeff Gordon was in the booth. Jeff and I were great explainers, but as it turned out, we weren't the best entertainers, and this is why we have a varied group of people that work with us. So he's going to add a lot, and the most important thing he's going to add, as Clint did and as Jeff did and as Darrell did when Fox started covering NASCAR in 2001, is I was just there and I just did that. We've been missing that since Clint stepped out of the car. So now we'll have that back again. And that's true not just of racing, but of sports television. All these sports change dramatically in how they're played and how they're conducted from the locker room and field level. Not so much from the grandstand seats, but baseball today is so different from baseball, when you or I were kids. And you need people whose perspective is fresh to help balance those of us that, haven't been in the car on the big stage for a while.
All right, my final question I always like to ask, and we've been speaking with Mike Joy. Pleasure to have you here today at Legends Day. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered to the viewers and the fans of yours over the years?
That I had a job that I really loved and never went to work a day doing it. It was always fun. I tried to do my homework, tried to do my research, and tried to present the sport in a way that was both interesting and left the viewer with, I can't wait to tell the guys at work about that on Monday morning. And I think many of us in the field would be like that. I've been blessed. It's been a great ride, and it's one I'm not anxious to see end.
Mike Joy speaking with us here today, and we're going to jump aside, and we're going to have Dave Moody right here on the other side, next on 95.9 WHED. And we are back at the New England Racing Museum on Legends Day, joined by the Motor Racing Network's legendary voice out in turns 1 and 2. From Barrie, Vermont, Dave Moody. Dave, pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I don't know about legendary, but I'm good. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So the question we always like to start with is, how'd you catch the racing bug?
I caught the racing bug. Well, I grew up in Montpelier, Vermont, which is one town over from Barrie. My uncle, when I was about 6 years old, he used to go to Thunder Road all the time. One day he finally figured out that he had a perfectly good nephew down the street, that he might as well just drag me along. And from that day forward, it kind of ruined me for anything else.
A great event here today that includes the likes of Dick Berggren, Mike Joy, Jack Arute, and you're here representing the legendary Ken Squire. Talk to us about the names that I mentioned and what they mean to the sport.
Well, they're awesome. And I'll start with Ken because so many people in this room owe their careers to him. He was very giving of his time and his talent. He taught me everything I know about announcing stock car races. I announced at his racetrack for 30 years, and he taught me everything I know. Mike Joy, I think, would tell you the same thing, that a lot of the doors that got opened in their careers were because of Ken. I think Dick Berggren would tell you the exact same thing. I think all of us would kind of say the same thing, that when you look around, a significant number of the people broadcasting auto racing, big-time auto racing on radio and TV, tend to be from New England. And that seems like a geographical abnormality until you figure out that it's all Ken Squire. He's the one that opened all those doors.
What do you think is the most important part about your job in capturing motor race over the radio?
Strangely, listening. You've got to listen to the guys that come in front of you and hear, because a lot of these tracks you can't see every inch of it. So if you're not listening to what they're saying, you have no idea what's going on. And you don't want to start calling a race that you've been blind to for the last minute and 40 seconds. So as strange as it seems, in a business where talking is kind of what we get paid to do, none of that happens without the listening.
So you mentioned the likes, like we said, of Ken Squire, Dick Berggren, Mike Joy, and New England. Some favorite memories. Of course, you've been traveling the circuit now with the Motor Racing Network for quite some time, but some favorite memories from up here in New England racing. wise.
Yeah, traveling now is a whole lot different than it used to be because, when I was getting started in this deal, all of our traveling was done behind the wheel of a car. And, when I started to get a little more successful and, people wanted to hire me, I would work Thursday at Thunder Road, I'd work Friday at Oxford, Maine, I'd work Saturday in Plattsburgh, New York, and I'd work Sunday wherever the American Canadian Tour was, and that might be 8 hours out to Cayuga, Ontario, qualify, race, get back in the car, and drive 8 hours home. So, yeah, you earned your stuff back then.
Of course, we're kind of wrapping up here, so one final question for you, and I know you ask this question a lot. It's one I like to ask my guests as well. When it's all said and done, how do you, Dave Moody, want to be remembered?
I was a race fan day one, and I'll be a race fan the day they carry me out. I've been very fortunate to be able to do what I like and to make a halfway decent living in a sport that I love. But if it all went away tomorrow and I had to pay my way into the grandstands and just sit and watch, that's exactly what I'd do.
Joined by Dave Moody, we will step aside, take a break, and be back with more of Miles on Motorsports right here on 95.9 WATD. And back here with our third and final guest of our In the Turn interview from New England Racing Museum up in Loudon, New Hampshire. We are joined by the one and only Jack Arute. Jack, welcome, and pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it's a real treat for me, too. Thanks.
So the favorite question I like to ask out of the gate of all our guests is, how'd you catch the racing bug?
Well, it was my dad. My dad's history is well documented, and what a lot of people don't realize is his love affair started all the way back in the early 50s. And, Tony Kornheiser, a friend of mine, was, pardon the interruption, once said to me, he says, you realize, Jack, that auto racing is the only thing like baseball that's passed on from generation to generation. And that was the case with my dad. I played football, played baseball, did all the things growing up. But the one thing that out of all the kids, I'm the oldest of 7, was that I shared singularly with my dad was a passion for auto racing. So that through the years is what got me started.
So a great event here today, obviously honoring Dick Berggren, Ken Squire, also Mike Joy and yourself. What does it mean to be inducted here and honored on such a day with the likes of those three names?
It's like I don't belong. I'll be very, very honest with you. I've said it, and I say it all the time. I never looked upon what I did as anything substantial or, worthy of being inducted into a Hall of Fame. Rather, what I did is I felt like I was really a lucky guy. And that was to never have to work a day of my life, to do something that I dreamed about from the time I was 5 years old, and to feel as if I made an incredible, giant family, both at Stafford, at Thunder Road, over at Indianapolis, Daytona, wherever it was. And that, to me, when I look at that banner right now, I'm having a really hard time getting my arms around it, because I think those other cats deserve to be hanging from the rafters. Somebody's going to have to convince me, because I don't feel that. I just felt like I had a lot of fun with friends today, sharing stories.
As two up-and-coming radio, media, broadcasting personalities for motorsports, and you're very genuine and passionate about the non-social media, and be true to it and be genuine, don't control it. What is a piece of advice you'd give to two guys like us trying to make a living on this show?
I'll give you the same advice that Jim McKay gave me. And he says, Jack, don't let them change you. You don't need to be polished. You don't need to be anything other than who you are. So, always imagine that you're sitting on a couch with your 3 best friends and have a conversation.
Good advice for sure. Lot of great things going on at Stafford Motor Speedway. As somebody who's involved at Seekonk, we see what's going on at Stafford, and just the excitement, the renovations, everything that's went on over the last couple of years. Talk to us about what's going on at Stafford, what it means to you to see the project and the track continue to grow.
I think about it a lot, because, now that I'm retired, and my brother Mark and his wife Lisa, and most importantly, their 2 sons, Paul and David, they have protected the legacy that was the foundation of what my dad did. And they have brought it into the 21st century. Things that I know my dad would just smile about. safer barriers, the SRX series, Cletus McFarland coming this summer, cutting edge things, but most importantly, without sacrificing what I call the footprint or the blueprint of what Stafford has always been. Yes, it's got, giant LED screen. Yes, it's got, a professional Indianapolis-style PA system. But it's also got the feeling where you can have kids' big wheel races. It's also, when you go there, it's not so fancy that you think you have to wear a suit. Is the best. I try to explain that to people. You feel at home. That's what my dad always wanted. Wanted the competitors to feel at home, wanted the fans to feel at home, and wanted them to actually be there and think and believe, because he believed it, that they had a stake in the track. And I think Paul and David, the fact that they both race, has added an additional understanding of what today's sport is all about.
One of the final questions, of course, we like to always ask, and it's a page on a Dave Moody's book, which we talked to Dave just before you. When everything's all said and done, your time's up, how do you want to be remembered to the racing fans?
To the racing fans, just Jackie. I take pride that I'm the third. My grandfather was inspirational to me. My dad, it goes without saying. And to feel as if, I carried on their legacy, made a lot of mistakes along the way, have been kind of the bad boy in some cases. But overall, I just want fans to know, when they say my name, say, boy, he was passionate about his sport that he loved.
Jack Arute joining us, our In the Turn interview from the New England Racing Museum here today, Legends Day, for, of course, being joined right out of the gate, Mike Joy, then Dave Moody and Jack Arute. It's been a all-star filled In the Turn interview, sponsored this week by J&C Automotive, located at 740 Brockton Ave.